Okay, so we are on, Maishi? Okay. The Vilna Gaon suffered a lot in his lifetime. Some of it was elective, as the minig of many tzaddikim was, that he went into Galus, a self-imposed wandering from place to place. In one instance, without getting into the intricacies of the story, the Vilna Gaon was framed for something and subsequently was put into prison. And they allowed him to be there with some type of a gabbai. And it was not a very pleasant prison. And the situation was dire and challenging. And the Gra Kimin Hagai woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to learn, as was his minik, as he slept only 2 hours a night. And he turned to his gabbai and he said to him, "Thank you very much." And he said to him, "Can you please get me a coffee, because it's very hard for me to concentrate." And the Gabbai said to the Vilna Gaon, he reminded him that they were in jail, not in the Statler Hilton or the Stamford Plaza, or they didn't really have, what coffee? There's bars and rats running around and, a bunch of murderers and some mean-looking guard munching away on a polka outside, where exactly is he supposed to get a coffee from? So the Gra said, I have to learn, and it doesn't go. I need a coffee, so please run home to my house and get a coffee and come back. I guess they did have the covers on those styrofoam cups then. So again, he reminded the Gra that there's this gate and barbed wires and a watchtower and guards and barking dogs, and it's not so simple for him. If he would tell them he just wants to go and get a coffee, he'll be right back, it may not work. Like somebody once said, that was he said he came out of a prison, he said it wasn't so geferlich. They allowed him to perform all mitzvahs, all minhagim, except one thing. They wanted to open up the front door by shvay chamascha, and the guards were not so obliging. So the Vilna Gaon told him that there's a pipe that runs underneath the, some type of a water pipe that's not being used now, and if you could lift the grate and sneak in and get out there and get home, okay, and get me the coffee and come back and sneak back in and close the door behind you. So, the Rebbe says you don't ask any questions. In this context, we are referring to the Gra as the Rebbe. And he gets into the pipe and he gets out there and makes the coffee and he comes back and he gives it to the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon is learning the entire night. So afterwards, I guess when he got a free moment, he said to the Vilna Gaon, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" He said, "Yeah." He said, if we had a way to get out, why did I go for the coffee and come back? Why don't we just quickly exit out through the pipes? So the Gra explained to him that, no, there was a gzeir over here to have to be in prison overnight or for 30 days, whatever it was. That was a metzias. But what does that have to do with learning? When it comes to your mesiras nefesh for learning, there has to be eitzes. So in other words, what the Gra is teaching us is to split the hair. That the objective in life is not necessarily sometimes, and a person can be behind bars in many, many different ways, besides the fact that the Chavetz Chaim said that a hospital is the Kosh Baruch Hu's jail. But a person could be emotionally behind bars, a person could be down, a person could be to have to tough it out. And, sometimes we want nothing less than the doors to open and for the problem to be over. But really, that's not the mechuven. I mean, if you can do so, kol hakavod. But where most of the yeshuas in life lie is, this is the matziv, and I accept it. This is the situation, but that doesn't mean I won't get my coffee, I won't be able to learn. That when it comes to my ruchnius, or when it comes to the things that I have to uphold, somehow there is a way to do it. I'll never forget, once when I was teaching 8th grade, and I was going to the next day to a federal prison, a maximum security federal prison to speak to the prisoners. I wasn't being. And I was going in. So there was 2 people that I was talking to, and I had to give a speech. It was a whole thing, a whole program. So I said to the 8th grade boys, as I often did, before I shared the experience with them beforehand, and I said, I've told you many stories throughout the year, and you realize that these are people that are going through very difficult and trying times. Is there any story that you remember that perhaps would be apropos, that would be appropriate over here to say to these inmates, and try to describe to them what it's like in a prison? It's not geschmack. So some of the kids, spoke about Amunah and B'tachon. They remember different stories throughout the year. It felt good. Finally, one last kid, they said, ooh, the kid that goes, ooh, 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 I'm going, oh no, something's good's coming. He says, yeah. He says, I have the right story for you to tell them. I said, what is the story you want me to tell them, Mashallah? Because remember you told us the story about the Rabbeinu Gershom that was imprisoned up high in a tower, right? I remember that you said that his wife came along and she took this inchworm, and the inchworm carried a thread all the way to the window. Right. Then he tied that thread to a thicker thread and a thicker thread till he tied it to blankets, and he was able to suspend himself from the window, and he ran off, and they lived happily ever after. Yeah. Tell him that story, No, that's not the Indian here. We're not helping people escape from prison. We are trying to help people cope with their situation. That's the way it is. It's interesting that the real courage in life is not to run away from your problems. The real courage in life is to be able to deal with it and say, this is the matzif, and life is going to go on. It's very interesting that it just so happens that this Friday I visited someone in one of the prisons, a state prison, and there was a man there, and he was a whole celebrity. He had run away for 9 years. I think he's the longest prisoner that escaped on record, and he was just recently caught. And there was a whole to-do, and everybody was talking to him, and he was a whole hero there. So I didn't personally speak to him, but I overheard him say, so someone said to him, what was it like 9 years of freedom? So he said it wasn't 9 years of freedom. You know what it's like, turning your back every 2 seconds, every time you see a police car coming down the block, you run and you duck, and every time, he says, in a way, he has more freedom now than he had then. At least now, this is it. And then it was like every 2 seconds, every time the door opened, every time this. And I think that there's a lot to say. A lot of times we want to run away from our problems. We can't run away from our problems. And as a result, we think that we're acquiring freedom, which is not a real freedom. And dealing with the situation head on there's a siyata d'shmaya, and there's a koyach, and there's a way to find the coffee. I think one of the most courageous stories I ever heard, World War II stories. I know Tisha B'Av is in the rearview mirror, but I just reminded myself of this today. There were these Gera Bachrim, Matisyafniks they were called, followed by Matisyo, and they were unbelievable bravery. They never signed up for working for the Germans, and they kept their payers, and they sat learning and in basements and in sub-basements in the Warsaw Ghetto. So when they were caught, one of them was dragged away by the Germans. And in front of everyone, the Germans started to beat him and beat him and beat him, and it was clearly they were beating him to death. And he ran away for them. And they chased him, and they caught him, and he turned as if he has one last dying word to say to his friends. So like, go ahead, say it. And he turns to them and says, remember, tonight you start saying the same Talimat L'Bracha. And they dragged him back. And if you realize the courage in that statement, as if to say, life is going to go on. I know the last thing on your mind is when we start saying the same Talimat L'Bracha, but life is going on. And we spoke last week the story about Rabbi Ramatcha, who was the Chidush Yerim's oldest son, one of the unfortunately many children that passed away in his lifetime. So he was once standing by his father's tish, and a bench fell on his foot, and it was baking in, it was digging into his foot, and he didn't want to stare his father's Torah until he mamish fainted. When he fainted, he didn't know what happened. They lifted the bench, and he said, I don't want to stare the Torah. And that's a tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. The physical aspect of it is a tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. But there are people that are emotionally have benches on them. There are people that are going through a lot. People that have children in hospitals, people that are struggling so hard with parnasses, and they're pushing off their landlords from 1 month to the next month, and they don't know what the next month is going to be. And they try to come home, and you try to smile, and you try to say, even though the bench is kvetching in on my foot, I'm going to do my best to tell my kids, hey, tonight we start saying the same Talimatar. In a sense, that is almost an equal amount of courage. We've mentioned before from the Avodas Yisrael, from the Kazhan Samagid. He says that a wife is having a horrible day. When her husband comes home, she wants to give him, what they say, Meya Koilis, the Meya and Sheva Brachas and everything. She's going to give it to him. She wants to explode. And she says, it's Shabbos, it's Friday afternoon, my husband's going to come home, I'm going to explode and kill the whole Shabbos. And she forces this smile on her face. Meanwhile, the husband, he had a rough day, and he's about to give it to his wife, because on the outside he had to smile, and in business he had to smile, so when you come home, some people let it out, and he wants to explode, and he says, it's Shabbos, Friday, I'm going to mess up the whole Shabbos. And he forces a smile on his face. And he comes in, he sees her smile, and he realizes this is a painted smile. And she sees his smile. She realizes that his smile is an uphill battle. But they do it, they both do it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, so I'm also going to smile. Even though you're not deserving that you should be smiled at, I am also going to be Meichel your Averis and smile with you. I had an incident last week. I apologize if I said this here. I just don't remember exactly what I said what. But I needed a toiva from a certain individual. I'm going to give a name, but obviously that's not his real name. Let's say his name is Moshe Rosenberg. And I needed a favor from Moshe Rosenberg. And Moshe Rosenberg was not calling back. And I was very, very upset at this Moshe Rosenberg. Again, not his real name. And I really needed his favor from him, and time was running out, and I called, and I called. I did all the trick. I called from my cell phone, I called from my house phone, called from my friend's cell phone, I called from, I shouldn't see who's calling, maybe he should pick up by mistake, and nothing doing. He's not calling back. And at one point, I was so frustrated. And I remember I was sitting on my couch in my dining room, and it was just a fleeting thought for a second. It was not a right thought, but it was a fleeting thought that went through my mind. And I said, you can't make this Moshe Rosenberg call me. And at that moment, the phone rings. And I look at the caller ID on the phone, Moshe Rosenberg. So I should have asked for Mashiach, at least for $1 million. And I was really proud of my koyach in Shemayim, Tzaddik Geyser, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim, even though the Chavetz Chaim's son said that the Chavetz Chaim once told someone he was much more impressed with HaKadosh Baruch Hu Geyser with Tzaddik Mekayim, those kind of stories. But, so, it says Moshe Rosenberg, there you go, right there and then. So I pick up the phone, hello? Yeah. Okay, it was Moshe Rosenberg, but it was a different Moshe Rosenberg. This Moshe Rosenberg that was calling me is a Meshulach that's here from Eretz Yisrael, fellow that learned with me many, many years ago, and he wanted me to go around with him for his yeshiva at night. He's not the Moshe Rosenberg that I wanted to hear from. So my initial reaction was, who? That Moshe Rosenberg? So my initial reaction was, get off my phone! I didn't say that. I stopped short and I said, it's not Moshe Rosenberg B's fault that I was expecting a call from Moshe Rosenberg A. You know what I mean? He didn't give his name by the bris. He didn't orchestrate this. So I wound up going around with him. And later on, whatever the taiva was I needed from Moshe Rosenberg A, I got through a different channel. No shaykhs to Moshe Rosenberg A, who is yet to call me back. So if you're listening, you don't have to call me back anymore. Now, so I was beginning to think, okay, so what's the lesson here? So lesson number one is, it's not good. The Rebbeinu Shalom hears us, okay? When you talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom, he is listening to you. When you start threatening, like the Schachter Rebbe once came in, he saw this guy davening, banging on the wall, screaming. He says, you tried asking nicely first, before you get violent. When you get emotionally violent, and we say to the Rebbeinu Shalom, do you hear me or not? I'm talking to you. Calm down. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, what was that? You don't hear me? I'm asking Moshe Rosenberg to call me. Moshe says, okay, fine, I'll get Moshe Rosenberg to call. You didn't say which Moshe Rosenberg, right? That's number one. Not good to threaten the Rebbeinu Shalom. Number two, there's something else over here. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, listen, you got a problem, okay? And you need a solution to the problem. You need a resolution to the problem. And you decided that Moshe Rosenberg A has the answer. Who says he has the answer? Maybe Moshe Rosenberg B is the answer. Maybe if you take the time during a difficult period and you put your frustration on hold, put it into the freezer and you walk around with someone, maybe that's the Yeshua, that's what's going to lead to the Yeshua. Yeah, but think now when I'm all ungezeigt, now when I'm all worked up, I have no patience for Moshe Rosenberg B. Well, maybe it's only going around with Moshe Rosenberg B when you have no patience for him. You need that level of schos to have a Yeshua. So very often in life, we have a perception, okay? We have a perception that we know what our problem is, and we know what the answer is. We know neither what our problem is, and we know neither what our answer is. There was a horrible tragedy, I don't know, it was yesterday, a day before, where a train derailed a coal car, and it fell on a parked car, and 2 women were killed. Do you think that, everything is Ashgacha, but think these 2 human beings are sitting there. And I don't know what they're talking about, but imagine 2 people sitting and taking a break, and sitting in their car and schmoozing with each other. And they're saying, what's going to be with our boss? What's going to be with the checks in the mail that aren't coming? What's going to be with that upstairs neighbor, the leak? We always have this problem that's bogging us down. And did they know what's happening, right, a second before or a second afterwards? Does anyone know? So what should I do? I shouldn't think about the problem with the check in the mail or my boss or the leak? Yeah, think about it. But take it easy. It's not the end of the world, because you don't know what the end of the world is. By the same token, we sometimes think there's solutions. If I can only get through to him, there'll be a solution. If only I can do that. If only this person would give in. Who says that's your solution? So the answer is, we have a perception of what our problems are. We have a perception of what our solutions are. And the Rebbeinu Shem says, work with tunnel vision. Work with what you perceive. But in the back of your mind, know that I'm the only one that knows what your real problems are. And I'm the only one that knows what your real solutions are. Elamai, Rabbeinu Shalom. So why am I in a pickle now that I have to think what's the Eitzah and come on to that? Because I want something from you now. I want you to focus on this and work your way out of it. Knowing, but Bari Olam, you're the only one that can help me. And as a result, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is guiding us into what our avodah is for that day. But it may not necessarily have anything to do with our real problem or our real solution. If you want to talk to Moshe Rosenberg, hey, fine, because Al Pi Cheshbon, he's the one that can help me. But if the Rabbeinu Shalom sends you Moshe Rosenberg B, don't slam the phone down. That's the Kadosh Baruch Hu answering your tefillah. And if you understand that it could be, I want to talk to Moshe Rosenberg, hey, if only he could help me. If only he would give in and help me. But in the back of your mind, only the Rabbeinu Shalom knows who can help me. And maybe it's Moshe Rosenberg B that could really help me. You will talk differently to your wife. You will talk differently to your husband. You'll talk differently to your child. You'll talk differently to your neighbor. You know, somebody once showed me, I forgot who it was, the mayor of New York in the late 1800s. But he called a major news conference and said that there was a tremendous problem with the amount of horses in New York City, and that the animal dung is going to fill up the streets so high that the city can't cope with it, and it's going to lead to disease. And he said, there's no answer to this. It's only going to get worse. In 100 years from now, we're going to be swimming in dung. Are we swimming in dung? Carbon monoxide poisoning maybe, but from the car exhaust. But do we know what tomorrow is? We always have to bear in mind. I have to deal with the perception. That's what the Rebbe wants me to do now. But relax, because I don't know what the real problem is. And I don't know what the real solution is. I just have to do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do. And during those opportunities that you're zeicha to this matana, this gift, that Moshe Rosenberg 2 calls, take it. What are shi'arecha? Gateways. All we see is the gateway. And because we have an emotional mix in our life, that either we're dealing with a depression, or we're dealing with a challenge, or we're dealing with a fear, and we're dealing with that fear, don't say, oh no, it's the end. Say, okay, the Rebbeinu Shem gave me this Nisayon, because the Rebbeinu Shem wants me to do something about it. But only the Rebbeinu Shem knows what my real problem is. You know, it says, V'yahavta l'reyacha kamaycha, love your neighbor like you love yourself, zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Asks the Sfas Emes, if that's the klal gadol, what is the klal katan? What is the little klal? He says the little klal is loving yourself. Believe in yourself. Believe that, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. It's not the way you see it. Believe that the Rabbeinu Shalom is listening to you. If you love yourself, then that is the first step to loving your neighbor. To believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching you. And the Sivas Shalom brings from the Chernobyl Magid that if a person does not believe that when you give a krechts, that the Rabbeinu Shalom listens to that krechts, that is apikorsis. The Rebbeinu Shalom listens to every sigh, to every krechts. What's the story? There are 3 babas that are sitting together. One of them goes, "Ay," the other one goes, "Yai," and the third one goes, "Ay vayizmir." And the first one says, "If we don't stop talking about our kids, I'm telling you, I'm leaving." Okay. The Rabbeinu Shalom hears our krechts. The Rabbeinu Shalom knows who we are. And the Rabbeinu Shalom listens to every tear. The Imrei Amis, I mentioned the story many times. His son, the Pnei Menachem, was being drafted. He was a young boy. The Polish army, and maybe there was a particular emphasis that he was the Rebbe's son, so he's not going to get away with it. And the Askanim were up against a dead wall. No one knew what to do. And his mother was crying and crying by Lechzinden. And he got out of it. They freed him. And afterwards, she found out that the Imri Emes was telling Hasidim, don't worry about it. So she came running in, and she had a big taina to her husband. She said, if you knew, you're a Rebbe, and you knew that there's no problem, so why'd you let me cry a whole Shabbos? So he said, but how can I explain to you the reason I knew it's not going to be a problem is because I saw your tears. I knew what your tears are going to accomplish. So I couldn't tell you. So do you understand? There are things in our lives. If it's not a problem, why am I worried about it? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu says it's not a problem because of your tears. I need you to connect. And that's what the Mabit says. The Mabit says that the Yisoid of Tefillah is not necessarily that we're out there solving a problem. Because we don't know what our real problem is. If I'm sitting in a car saying, please, my landlord, I can't take it anymore, what he's doing to me. Why are you not answering me? I'm still having problems with my landlord. Little do I know that the train passed by and didn't derail because of my tears. But you don't know how your tefillahs are connecting. We're going to find out in Shemayim how no tefillah was wasted. But the ikar yesod of tefillah is an acknowledgement, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I need you. My tefillah is real. You know, it says that a person sometimes, there's a whole shaila in the Gemara, do I swear to do a mitzvah? You're not supposed to. We don't do it. But there is a concept of Nidre's reason or a shvuah that I'm going to sit and learn tonight. A shvuah, I'm going to learn every night an hour. You're not supposed to do it. But there is such a havaman in the Gemara that it gives you a zrizas to do it. It gives you an extra fortification that you have to do it, a commitment. You have no choice. Frek the Gemara, but the shvuah is not chal. You're nishba v'oimed mehar Sinai. Ain't shvuah chal al shvuah. If I swear I'm going to eat spaghetti tonight, and then I swear again I'm going to eat spaghetti tonight, and I eat spaghetti, I'm only chayav makas once, not for the second shvuah. Second shvuah is not chal, the first shvuah. So the Shloah Kaddish says that we mamish stood by Har Sinai physically. That's the raya. If you swear to fulfill a mitzvah, the mitzvah doesn't work. So the Stipler says, you know what the point of the Gemara is? The point of the Gemara is because your Yetzer Hara is going to come along and say, you swore to learn? You swore to learn. Who needs your learning? Who needs your davening? So at that point you say, oh, so it's not a mitzvah. Oh, so now my shvuah goes into effect. So in other words, it's a trick to the Yetzer Hara. The Memanavshach. You are obligated one way or another. Shoftim v'shoitrim titi l'cha b'chal sherecha. We only see the shah, we see the gateway. We don't know what's called failure. We don't know what's called success. The most frustrating thing in your world, in this world, could be your biggest success in Shemayim. The Berditsheva once before Slicha started to cry and cry and cry. He said, such a gzeira. That's Klal Yisrael is facing, and they knew when he said that it wasn't Pashut. And finally got onto his horse and wagon and said, we're traveling. And they started to travel. And they came to a certain house. And he said, in this house lies the answer to the Gzeira. Don't you see the shine coming out of the house? The shine coming out of the house. We don't see no shine coming out of nowhere. There's a shine coming out of this house, I'm telling you. And he knocks on the door. And there's a woman sitting there crying her heart out. And the Berditsheva walks in with his companion, with his Hasidim, and he asks her, what's the matter, my daughter? She says she's an almana, her husband died, and so on, and describes her troubles and her tzaris. She says, it's my fault. She's holding a lock of hair. And he says, what's this lock of hair? So she says what happened, that she once came into the Paritz, her father sent her to deliver the rent, and the Paritz made an advance toward her, and she ran, and he caught her, and she said she'd rather die, and he said, just let me stroke your hair. So she didn't know what to do, so he did it, and then afterwards she broke loose and ran away. And she felt like, she wasn't ma'aseh herself for that. And because of that, she looked down at herself, and she felt like a failure, and she felt that's why her husband died. And she came home that night and shaved off all of her hair. And she was holding on to this lock of hair. And the Berditsheva said, can I please have that lock of hair? And come with me. And she followed him to shul. And he got up there before Slichas. And he held up this lock of hair before the Aron Kodesh in front of all the people. Not a conventional thing to do. And he said, Boirei Kalaylamim! Do you see what this woman went through and what she's crying about? How her heart is broken! And the Berditsheva turned around and smiled and said, the Gzeira was broken. The Gzeira in Shemayim was broken. And he turned to her and said, you saved Klal Yisrael. And of course the woman that saved Klal Yisrael was well taken care of financially and whatever had to be done for her afterwards. There are times in life we feel it is our worst failure. And we're saving Klal Yisrael. We don't know. We don't understand how it goes. We don't understand how hair goes. She shaved off her hair. I remember in yeshiva, there were these two twins. They were identical twins, but mamish identical. And they were such practical jokers you can't imagine. I would say their name, but I don't think they would appreciate it. So there was this barber that moved in, an old Russian Yid, and they, not that I am saying kashering this, they had no right to do it, but he came in and he sat down on the barber chair, and the poor guy, did put on the thing and spritzed and got everything ready, rolled up his sleeves to start the surgery, ready, prep, passed the thing, 1, 2, 3. He was so excited about his first customer of the day, and he goes, I changed my mind. He goes, why you change your mind? He says, I don't take haircuts. He says, why don't you take haircuts? He said, because my hair grows back right away, it doesn't pay. Well, how fast does your hair grow back? 10 minutes. No such thing. No such thing. He goes, and I'm telling you, it doesn't pay. It grows back in 10 minutes. You come back after 10 minutes, it grows back, I'll give you the haircut again. You sure? Okay, so of course he does it, and 10 minutes later the identical twin walks in, the poor barber goes, never said, it looks like a failure. It looks like, I'm wrong. You're not wrong. This is life. We don't understand life. We don't understand the perception of life. And that's why it's all yoinim lamata v'tachtoinim lamayla. That, a lot of people down here think, I failed, I lost it, I failed. You didn't fail. You don't know. You don't know how one krechts goes in Shemayim. You don't know. You can be the one that saved all of Klal Yisrael. Shoftim v'shoitrim titin l'cha, and the pasuk says, Hashem le'kacha noisin lach. Hashem gave you this nesayin. Hashem gave you this gift. Over Shabbos, where I was, there was a young man over there, Rachmana litzlan, that he had ALS, and he's laying on a wheelchair bed. The only thing he could move is his eyes. So during the week, they have now a computer that reads his retina, and that's how he can talk. He moves his retina, and letters appear on the computer. So I said, it was one of the. Someone told me, one of the people that works with him, it was one of the first days they got this computer. And an aide came in, aide from the agency. She looked at this man laying there. Only thing he could move is his eyes. And she yelled out, like, why does God do this? It was like, so the first thing he said on the computer with his eyes, he goes, tell her whatever God does is good. Right? It's very easy to say Gamzu L'Toiva when you're running around and you're eating your third pizza for the night. But laying on a bed, and the only thing you can move your eyes is to say that. I ask you, Mika Amcha Yisrael, do we know who the heroes of Klal Yisrael are? After 120 years, by the great Siyam Hashas, when Mashiach is going to come, do we understand who's going to sit over there? There'll be a mechitza there with a lady that cut over here. There'll be a person that Baruch Hashem will have refuah shalema. We're going to go back to these things. We don't know what the heroes of. And the same is true in every person's life. It is probably the lowest moment of your life, the most frustrating period of your life, where you're the greatest hero, when you stand up there and you daven. The Baal Shem Tov once came to a certain house and he told a woman that you davened the mincha here 2 weeks ago that saved the entire thing. There was a marauding group of people that had murdered and plundered, and they skipped this village, and you're the one that saved her. This Yidden saved her with the mincha, and they ran to, what mincha was this? Yakabanas Warizal, what was it? And she said, no, she got into a mad fight with her husband, and she started davening. She got so angry, she picked up a plate, she was going to run into the thing and smash it over the head with it. She goes, I'm davening now. She put the plate down and suppressed her anger, and just started to cry, and somehow her anger was converted to tears and to prayer, and she got a hold of herself. That mincha saved the town. That mincha saved the town. Rebbetzin Kanievsky used to say from her mother, they asked her, who do you respect the most? She said there's a woman that her husband was extremely wealthy and rich. He lost all of his money. He made a bad business deal. Bad deal. And he wound up being a construction worker. Worked like together with the lowest of the low, schlepping mud and bricks. And his wife, every single night, used to dress up her best and come out to greet him. He shouldn't think for 1 minute that she looks down at him. She said, that's the person that I respect the most. Your gateway, your door. Don't look at someone else's door. Look at yours. I'll tell you a little embarrassing story, but I'm sitting in my attic, which is the team to my car, and you got to go through a ladder and get up, move the clothes away and get up a ladder. It's my attic, the roofing nails stick out. If you stand up too quick, you get a little Gilgal Shelik over there, like a thing, but it's okay. It's good. We're putting air conditioning in, right? We're working on it, yeah. Okay, so that was not a shtech to somebody here. That was just a joke. No. Any event, so Baruch Hashem, so I'll never forget. It's cute. It's a nice little place to work. Just you have to get used to the TP part on top and climbing through the clothes on the way up and down the ladder. It's like, yeah. My 2-year-old Eniklach know how to go up and down the ladder. It's like interesting. But I remember at one point I was so like upset with it. Like, I'm going to have a decent office like once and for all. I just can't take this anymore. Like, claustrophobia. And this guy came up to fix the phone. This guy had a long ponytail. He works at one of the phone companies. And he walks in and I said, well, this is my office. I said sarcastically. And he looks at me and he goes, golly, I wish I had a place like this. I said, I'll listen to this guy. I got the message, Rabbi Shalom. I got the message. I am very, very happy with it. So I'm sitting up here in the attic, and I had this box of pens whenever I want to write. Now, I learned this, okay? If you want to have a pen, buy one pen. Because if you buy a package with 20 pens inside, you don't have any pens. All right? It's like these sales by these superstores, you say, we got to go, Tom, we got to go. Why? Because there's this paper for 2 cents, a package of paper. If you spend $85 on a toner, you get like 2 cents paper. It's like it's worth it, So they come on with boxes and boxes and boxes of paper for 2 cents. Then, all the kids are coloring this paper all over the place. And a week later, you need a piece of paper. There's no paper in the house. I said, do me a favor. Go to the local store on the corner. Spend $5 on a package of paper. You'll see there'll be paper when you need paper. Everyone takes a paper. There's 1,000 things. There's nothing there. Okay. So it was right before the summer. So we had boxes and boxes of pens. And I sit down and I have to write something. And there's no pen. There's no pen. I'm looking around for a pen. This is embarrassing. I'm looking around for a pen. And I find one pen in my drawer. This was a pen that one of my kids won for a prize in the day camp. Day camps have come up with these very interesting prizes. It was like a long pen. It had like a straw that goes around and around and around on top. Okay? There's like picture of a lolly, a flashlight, and a fan. This was a doozy. It was the only thing I found to write with. Okay? So I'm like writing with this pen. Right? And lo and behold, up the attic comes my brother-in-law. The only family gets up the attic because he wanted to talk to me about it, something. And he sits down and he sees me with this pen. And I'm looking at him. And he's like, I tell him, it's the only pen I have. So he starts telling me, that he's a Rabbi and one of his Talmidim, what he wants to handle the guy. I said, you have to handle the kid for what the kid is. That's all. Some kids are, but it's like strange. So if he's strange, you deal him with the way you deal with a strange kid. I said, but how do you deal with such a class? I said, you deal with what you have. I said, if this is your only pen, then you write with this. He said, how did you know I was coming, that you found this pen for the metaphor? I said, I didn't. It was the only pen I have. Okay? And if you use the only thing you have, then you see that's the answer to your problems. That's the way it is. The Hashem works that way. Hashem works that way. It says, the fool doesn't understand this. The Ber Maim Chaim says, a fool comes along and says, what's this? This. Everything else you understand? Imagine somebody goes into the cockpit of a 747. Right? He goes, what's that button? What's that? What's the only other buttons? Do you know? So he says, we're worried because, what if this happens? What if this happens? You know about all the freight trains? You know what's going on in your life? You're in the hands of the Rabbi Shalom anyway. So sit back and relax. So somebody told me, that's very nice. I heard the shmooze from you. But you can't run a business that way. Okay? You can't run a business that way. I don't know. Look at the Gemara we just learned in Brachis. Those of you learning Daf Yomi. I told Daf Hey, many more people are still up to the Daf. It says over there, Rav Huna, Takifilei Dalid Meya Dina Dechamer. He had 4 Dalid Meya Dina of wine that turned into sour, turned into vinegar. So they said to him, look, make a cheshbon nefesh. Why did you lose all your schayra, your merchandise? Why did it turn into vinegar? So he said, you choshed me, I did something wrong? So they said to him, you choshed the Kadosh Baruch Hu would do something wrong? So Rav Huna said, is there anyone that heard I did something wrong, let him come and say. So someone said, you have an oris, like a sharecropper, and you're supposed to give him a certain percentage, whatever, a certain thing. You didn't give it to him. So he said, because the guy stole everything I have. Why should I give it to him? So they told him, because he's a ganef. You're a ganef. So the Gemara says, okay, so he returned it. He returned to him. He paid him what he had to pay him. And there's 2 shittas in the Gemara. One shitta says that the vinegar turned back into wine, and another shitta says that the price of vinegar went up. I remember I heard from my rebellion, and it was worth just as much as the wine was worth, that the second shot is a bigger madrega. That the vinegar turned into wine, that's a nes. There's no bracha in nes. But that the price of vinegar went up, and he saw that in the vinegar there's the Yeshua, that's even a much bigger madrega. That's much easily applied down here in this world. So there's a whole sheet is there. What do you mean? Because the guy stole from him, he now to steal back. Whatever the terutzim are. Says Rabbi Yisrael Salat, you notice something? They didn't say to him, well, why did it become sour? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? You didn't seal it properly? They didn't even look at the teva, the natural aspect of this. They went straight to what you do wrong, that it happened. Look how they looked at the world. Okay, so a guy tells me, those are tzaddikim. Okay, if you want to run a business, you got to run a business. And don't tell me you'll stop making a cheshbon nefesh every time something goes wrong because you have to fix it and before the customer finds out about it. There's no time for that. That's what he told me. He says, I said, no, the business is also in the Rabbi Hashem's hands. Yeah, it's easy for you to sit there in yeshiva and say that. But I'm running the business and the ups and downs of the business. So I said, so we have a machlokes, whether the business is in Hashem's hands or not. This is the machlokes between Obama and Romney, no? Romney holds you throw the guy out if he's not doing good, and Obama says you didn't build the business, right? Isn't that what he said? The business is not yours. So leiv malachim v'sarim b'yad Hashem. So he's the president. He must know. Maybe he doesn't know why he said it, what he means, but he says the business is not yours. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now he says didn't mean that. He meant it on bridges and tunnels. So our whole life is bridges and tunnels. It's all b'chol shirecha. Shoftim b'shoftim titn lecha b'chol shirecha. The more we realize, hey, I got to do what I have to do. I have to focus on my problems. But in the back of my mind, you're the only one that knows what my problem is. You're the only one that knows what my solution is. When you want me to do this, I'll do it. Once you do it, life becomes a lot easier. You know, people have been driving back and forth in the country, so everyone knows that one of the most difficult approaches in the New York City highways is coming off the FDR Drive onto the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay? So whoever engineered that ramp from the FDR Drive onto the Brooklyn Bridge, either they were shicker or they were an apprentice to a shoemaker that got the job through some political favor. But I don't know. Here have 3 lanes that also have to go into one lane and curve around and merge with 6 different lanes onto the bridge. So there's this long line of cars, usually, if you know what I'm talking about, on the right lane coming down the FDR Drive. But that's a halbitzer. The thing is, you have some people that get into the right lane as soon as they can and they wait. Then you have other people that come down the lane, right, that goes to the tunnel. The last minute they pop in and force themselves in, whether you like it or not. Right? Then you have some people that even that lane is too slow for them. They stay on the left lane, and the last minute they cut through 2 lanes and they make it into the tunnel. So, to the bridge, right.
I can go on the bottom.
Yeah.
The exit right before.
Yeah. And cut people off over there.
All the way till the stop sign, then you go right up in the middle.
Okay, so that we'll leave that shia for next week. But I want to talk about when you're on top. Okay, so I'm coming down, and I'm one of those right lane guys. You know, I got time. So my kid says to me, "Tat, look at all the other people are doing." I said, "You know, I know what I feel like when I'm sitting here for 10 minutes, and the last minute some zhup comes right in. Right? I look at that guy, and there's a certain sinner toward me." And I said, if I have a beard and payas, so that sin is not just toward me, it's toward Yidden, b'chlal. Okay? So I have to make a decision. How much is how much is Kiddush Hashem worth to me? Is it worth either a wait or $6 for the tunnel? But it's not worth coming in the last minute. Okay? So I was sitting in the car once, the guy was saying, it's late. I said, this is my cheshbon. You want to donate the $6? No, $6.50, right, okay. So someone tells me no. I once had a whole debate in my car. One person said, there's nothing wrong with going in the last minute, it's minig hamakar. It's the custom of the place. Someone else said, no, it's a big chutzpah. The third guy said, well, it's a minig hamakar to have chutzpah. You know, that's the way it is. What do you want? I was once driving in New Hampshire, and you had to get off the highway, and there was this long line of cars. And I was like, I got on the line, and I was saying, what is going on here? What's happening? Like, they're giving out free sodas? Like, So I realized, I don't know, everyone's going off the lane. It didn't occur to anyone to jump in the last second. And we live in a zoological society over here. We went through this before. That's what we're doing. I said, I want my kids to remember, okay, that this was the cheshbon. The cheshbon is I am responsible. If I am doing something that is going to generate someone else's ire, so he's not. That means I'm a chal shem shemayim. I'm not saying maybe there's other opinions on this. Maybe I'm saying just because my car is very hard to move in and out of lanes. But I'm just saying that why do we make a cheshbon? Okay, it's not where I have to get to. It's what does the Rabbi Shalom want me to do? The Chedush Yarim once told someone. A Talmud once came to him and said, I'm leaving, I'm going off into business. Going off into business, he said, I'm leaving Torah and I'm going off into business. He said, what? What'd you say? He meant to say he's leaving learning, going into business. So the Chiddushei HaRim took him over to the Shulchan Aruch and said, notice which chalik of Shulchan Aruch has 3 chalakim. Right? Choshen Mishpat. You're entering into Torah now. You're going into business. It's God's business. It's a different world. The Chernobyl Maggid once came to a certain town, and his minig over there was to the Shachter. He always said to the Shachter, let me see your knife. So there was a Shachter there, a simple Shachter, and the Chernobyl Maggid is there. He said, let me see your knife. So he ran and he prepared his knife the way he always does. He said, that's what Chernobyl Maggid is looking at. Let me double do it to make sure it's smooth. As he started to, he said, wait a second. Every single day, I give people meat to eat from this knife. For the Rabbi Shalom, it's good. But now because I want to show off to a Rav, it's not good. And who am I? Then I'm a phony. This is my knife. This is what I show. So he brought it to the Chernobyl Maggid. Chernobyl Maggid was waiting outside, and he didn't even look at the knife. He said, if it's good for the Rabbi Shalom, it's good for me. How much do we do for the Rabbi Shalom, and how much do we do for ourselves? Even in business, even in the matziv of our life. This is where we go. Now, be'emes, this is what the pasuk says this week. The pasuk says like this. The pasuk lists 9 different types of kishuv that you're not allowed to do. Starting with maver benoyu bitay be'esh, which is the only chi of karis. Then goes kaisim kesamim, which is the person who holds out his stick. And whatever the stick tells you to do, that's what you do. Some people call that a stockbroker. I don't know. But then there's menachesh. Menachesh is if there's a deer crossing your path, you don't go weiter. I always feel when you're driving in the country and I see the deer crossing, I try to tell the kids, you see this deer crossing? You know what they're telling you? Even if a deer crosses, we're going weiter. We're Makayim, we're Makayim the license say now. I tried to tell that to those little kids that were in the car in Australia, but the problem over there is they have signs with kangaroo crossings, so it didn't work. Okay, there's Doirish Shalamesim, somehow you talk to dead people and you come alive, you get news, know exactly how that works. There's certain kishuv, certain kayachatum in the cemetery. You know the story, the guy's walking through a cemetery, he's petrified, and he sees somebody else walking, he says, I'm so scared. Come with me together. He says, I don't know why I'm so scared of cemeteries. He turns around and he says, I want to tell you, when I was alive, I was also scared. Just come along over here. So you know that there's a famous machlokes Rishonim. The Rambam holds that kishuv is not real. It was just a fake, phony fraud. It was as good as the $5 hand readers on the avenue. It was just all an illusion. Most Rishonim disagree. The Rabbeinu B'chaya, this week's Seder, explains kishuv. He says kishuv is like klayim. Okay? Wool and linen together works. The Mashal doesn't want you to do it. You make 2 animals together, 2 different species. It may work. The Mashal doesn't want you to do it. He says kishuv is a use of powers in this world that the Mashal doesn't want you to use. You're going against. You're machish pamalia shalmaila. So the Gemara says in Masechtas Chulin that there was a woman that picked up dust from Rav Chanina from the foot. Kind of kishuv, she wanted to throw it at him, and Rav Chanina said, pick it up, it's not going to hurt me. Ein oid movadai. What does that mean? So they teach that if you're maimin b'amunah shalema, wait a second. This power of kishuv is also a power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the Bria. If you're maimin that it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the kishuv cannot hurt you. Can't hurt you. So really, what is the whole thing of kishuv? The whole thing of kishuv is the guy is trying to outsmart someone else. But that doesn't mean he's happy, says the Yoreh Chaim HaKadosh. He's trying to outsmart someone else because he thinks, my survival, I'm going to cut this guy down, and I'm going to engage in some kind of magic, destroy and build, and it's mine. You're not going to be happier. It doesn't work. It only makes you more depressed. Rather, what does the pasuk say? So there's a Rashi in this week's Sedra. My father's Racha used to make me learn this Rashi Baal Peh every single year from when I was a little kid. And I run through the Rashi quickly. Tanim tiyam Hashem lekecha, says Rashi, his halech imay b'tmimus. You know what tmimus means? I don't know. I'll do my best, but I don't know. His halech is passive. I don't control my destiny. I am obligated to try to help myself. I get out there, try to earn a living, I try to do my... When I understand that I'm here, I don't know why I'm here. I understand I could be looking for Moshe Rosenberg Aleph, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu says Moshe Rosenberg Beis. Sit back and enjoy the ride. You're in the back seat of the car, Rabbi Israel Tower says. You're not in the first seat. Enjoy the ride. Right? Someone's driving. And you're sitting here, stop, turn, my backseat driver. And the guy says, my wife does the driving. I just sit behind the wheel. How come you're on a plane? You never go, hey, pilot, no, it's safe, pilot, look out. I have no shaykhs. It's like whatever it is. So you relax. That's relax. Sit. Enjoy the ride. His ha'alech is passive. You're in the back seat. Take it easy. The tetzapaloi. Tetzapaloi is also passive. Allow for hope to set in. If a person has a setback in life, it's very hard to hope. It's very hard to believe things are going to get better. Part of Tamimus is v'titzapalai. Life is not in your hands. Let the hope set in. V'loi sachkar achar hu asida, says Rashi. Don't think into what's going to be. Let me play the market. Which horse is going to win tomorrow? Relax. Take it easy. Heard from Rav David Grossman, he said that his father, it's a big chashuv yid, in Migdal Emek, when he built they made an Evan Apina, there was a huge big sign, the artist's rendition of the building that's going to be. And he called up his father to speak. He wouldn't speak. He says, I don't speak in front of fantasies. It's not real. It's Schachter. It's a sign. It's not there yet. What do you have to put up a picture of the building? The building is not here yet. What's wrong with saying we're starting to build? Let's see what happens. Why do you have to be ahead of yourself? It's a cook of the Frierdiker Dar. What's a chakira? In the Lamdisha circles. A chakira, there's two tzadim. Right? It's going to work. It's not going to work. It happened. You made your decision. Fine. It was a Kadosh Baruch Hu's will. I'll sit back and enjoy the ride. Whatever happens, happens. I should have, would have, could have. Right now, this is the situation. Now is the Ratzin Aboira. Al Tachkar v'Yasidus. Don't think it that what's going to happen. Oh no, I made this decision. Was it the right decision, wrong decision? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? I should have, I shouldn't have. You did it. Gegangen weiter. Tamen tiyem Hashem alekacha. Says Rashi, what is the reward for this? Astia imoy v'chelkai. These words, Astia imoy v'chelkai, is like the most intimate thing in the world. You are connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're a chelik of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tamen tiyem Im Hashem alekacha. Rebbeinu Shalom, I have shifted. You know, so the space shuttle, it flies on top of a different shuttle. Right? You think the space shuttle is powerful, right? But when it's flying on top of that 747, the 747 is the one that's in control. It looks like we're in control. We're not in control. That's it. You go to the Intrepid, and that's the mussar you should tell your kid. Okay? It says, the Rechaim HaKadosh, Tamim Tiyah, you want to be Tamim? Im Hashem alekacha. Realize that Kadosh Baruch Hu is guiding your life. You don't have to conquer the world. Don't despair when things don't work out your way. B'chol shi'arecha. All I see is only the doorway. I can only see the doorway. It says Chasam Sofer in the base of the Mikdash there were 12 different doorways. There were 12 different nuschayis hatfila. Every shevet had their own chelik and tefillah. And you have to have a Sanhedrin in each one separately. Why? Because everyone is judged with a whole different set of rules. It depends what your tafkid, what your job is down here in this world. I'm sorry. This is it. This is my life now. I like it. I don't like it. This is my marriage situation. This is my parnasa situation. This is the years that passed. This is the years that's coming. This is where I am now. From this point, wherever I am, that's what the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. That's it. Relinquish control. You don't have to have the cutting edge. You don't have to cut in. Sit back. And finally, for those that say you can't run a business that way, you know that last week passed away a yid who may have been the biggest Baal Tzedakah. Again, we don't know how to measure Mesiras Nefesh when it comes to Tzedakah. But in terms of money, he may have been the biggest Baal Tzedakah in the history of the world. And his name was Zev Wolfson. If you may have noticed an ad or two for him in the Hamadiyah or the Yated. I think from all the money that it cost these full-page ads, you could have supported yeshivas for 2 years. But anyway, you realize, I don't think people realize who this person was. Okay? Not only was he from the biggest Baal Tzedakahs, or the biggest Baal Tzedakah in the last centuries, he ran from Kavod the way he ran from the plague. Now it is some people want buildings on their names, others want their names on buildings. This was not a person who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, okay? He was 13 years old. He fled Vilna with his family. They were exiled to Siberia. His father froze to death. He carried the body of his father through the snow, the Siberian snow, so he should be able to be buried by a Chevra Kadisha. This is a 14-year-old kid. And then he set out to support his mother and younger brother. This is a person that could have said, this is how I grow up, this is what God did to me, I'm throwing in the towel. He came to America by the age of 17. He was in full swing in business. Not only in business, but somehow he had this knack of getting into the halls of Congress. And even before there were official lobbyists and they had to be registered, he was lobbying. And it started that he wanted Congress to lower an excise tax on something that he sold. And he was unbelievably successful. He had a certain charm and he had this knack on appealing to politicians and he knew who could pull which levers. And when he all of a sudden he had a thought, and he said, why should I do this for myself if I have a kayach? And he devoted most of his life and energy and time with great Mesiras Nefesh to do it for Klal Yisrael with no one knowing about it. No one. No one. Who didn't appear anywhere, even on no speeches, no in honor of, nothing. When he came to Eretz Yisrael once, Rabbi Aaron sent a letter with him to the Brisker Rav. And Rabbi Aaron wrote about, he said, this person, I just want to tell you, that things that are impossible, he does. Because he doesn't look at it whether he should or shouldn't. He views his life. Now, did anyone here ever heard of a senator, I guess 1950, Indiana senator by the name of Homer Capehart? No, I never heard of him either. Okay? But I want to tell you that as strange as the name Homer Capehart is to you, Homer Capehart never heard of Chinuch Atzmai until he met Mr. Wolfson. And he convinced him about this whole business deal and how somehow Chinuch Atzmai got into the picture. And he wound up writing to then Secretary of State John Foster Dulles. Levi Eshkol was the first finance minister for Eretz Yisrael, came, and he had his first meeting with the Foreign Relations Committee. And all of a sudden they said, tell us about Chinuch Atzmai, which they couldn't pronounce. The Eshkol thought he was going to fall off the roof, that was going to fall off the chair. That was the last thing he wanted to discuss. But they were so enamored with Chinuch Atzmai, he didn't know what to do about it. He got the hint that they would be very favorable to an Israeli government that supports it. He, over the years, through his connections in Congress, it was a series of foreign bills, loans, and refinancing that some say, and you're going to read more about this in the coming days, some say may have saved the state of Israel when they could have crashed under loans that they couldn't have kept. And not a word to anyone. He was the first that convinced the Americans to sell the Phantom jets to the Israelis. There was a senator, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, Inouye, and he came to visit him once and he took him for a ride on his boat, which he had only for congressmen and senators. And he said to him, there are missiles that are about to fall on Eretz Yisrael. He says, what does America have in their arsenal? He said, well, there's the Patriot missile that could shoot down a missile. It was a revolutionary thing. So he said, has Israel got it? He says, no. So he said to him, what everyone says in Hawaiian, no, like why not? So he said, well, you got to teach the Israelis how to ask for it. And he called Rabin that night and taught him how to ask for it. The next morning, the headlines in the New York Times were that the Americans delivering Patriot missiles after U.S. officials meet with Jewish leaders. This meeting was on a boat someplace. Now, there was I did some research on this, and there was a beautiful article in the Mishpacha by Yonis Rosenblum, but there was a Senate Majority Leader by the name of Trent Lott. And they once asked him, how did this person do this? He said the reason he was able to do it is because, how did he do this? Well, everyone else, usually in Congress you lobby, and then boom, you get kicked out. He said because he always stayed under the radar. He said what was amazing about him was no covet, no fanfare. As soon as his name appeared, he disappeared. And that's how he was able to champion amazing things. He got the president of France, Jacques Chirac, to donate land to the Oitzer Torah yeshivas. And when the system of lobbying changed and certain finance laws, campaign contribution laws went into effect, so then he reached a point where he opened up his personal wealth in an unprecedented way to keep this going. If you look in the Mishpacha, I had an interview with Aryeh Deri, who says that the Yesh Omrim, that he was behind the Nixon's decision of sending all the thing in the Yom Kippur War to get things going. He said the first time he saw him, he didn't know who he was, but he couldn't believe it, that there was this Yiddilah that's walking into Rabin's office and Shimon Peres's office without even knocking. No guards, everyone knew to let him through. And he came out. He said he had just first started getting into the inner circles of government. He said, who's he? He said this was before APEC and it was before Shas. And he was a one-man both. The amount of money that this person got for yeshivas was beyond imagination. But people didn't realize, and it started coming out now, the amount of almonis and yesoimim that he supported in Eretz Yisrael, legendary, amazing. The chairman of Merrill Lynch once asked him, how were you so successful in business? He says, because God gave it to me. This is a person, when he traveled economy, and if the stewardess asked him if he wants a bottle of water, he asked how much it cost. Because you can get water from the tap. Why the bottle of water? Okay? I had an opportunity this past year to spend Shabbos by son-in-law, a very friend of mine. It was a Shtarada Shabbos. You're sitting next to a person like this. I tell you, he was the most unassuming, pleasant person in the world. Just enjoying his family. You would have never, I heard the name before. But the truth is, people did not know. if you see now the full-page ads of like 40, 50, 60 from every Moisir in Eretz Yisrael, there were big Gaboy Tzedakah in Eretz Yisrael that were giving out big money to Almanas and Yisraelim. They were there by every tragedy, giving out thousands and thousands. No one knew where they got the money from. Well, they just figured it out now. Okay? So I went to be Menachem Oval. And I asked his sons, they said, give me a good story. Give me the stories that aren't printed. They didn't want to talk. They said our father never wanted to talk. So Rav David Grossman was there, from Migdal Emek, the famous thing. So he was extremely close with him. So I cornered him a little, and I said, get some ramais. So he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, Migdal Emek is one of the only places in the world where everything is closed on Shabbos. Right? He said that there was once a big company that's producing semiconductors. I have no idea what semiconductors are, but this company was producing, they were starting a big factory, and they were going to be open on Shabbos. And he didn't know what to do about it. And he had an ongoing relationship with Mr. Wolfson. And once he happened to come and he saw that he was talking to this person. They were financing something together. And he went into him and he whispered something into his ear. And he said, he's going to start building on Shabbos. And he found out later this was a multi-million, billion, cajillion contract. I don't know what it was. My pre-1A kid always says, Tati, you know how much there was? There was a cajillion. So I guess a cajillion is a lot. He said there was a multi, and he said, David Grossman, he said a story firsthand. This is a Kaylee Rishon story. He said, I whispered it to Mr. Wolfson's ear. He wants to build on Shabbos. He wants to keep the factory open on Shabbos. He said he stood up. You want to keep the factory open on Shabbos? The deal is off. Millions and millions, without blinking an eye. The deal is off. I asked him, I said to Rabbi Grossman, I said, you're well connected with the police, with everything. I know that in his retirement years, he's not so with the government officials. Did you ever, use your old kaiches to get him a flyover in some F-15 or something? He goes, they offered him different things. Never. He ran from the plague. If there was a Havaman of cover, or his name would appear, he threatened, he was closing everything. So he said that he was very makbet to daven with a minyan. And once he was, in Eretz Yisrael, they have this thing, if there's like a quarter inch of snow, everyone closes time. It's like a hurricane. I don't know why. But he said everything, all the roads were closed because it was like an inch of snow. So he said there was one time, he said, could you please get the police to open the roads because he doesn't have koyach to walk, he wants to go down with a minyan. He says that was the only time. So I ask you, my dear friends, for those who say you can't run a business that way, a munah b'tach, thinking about the Rabbi Shalom, you know what I mean? You got to cut in. You got to cut into that lane. A business, you got to bury someone. They say Rothschild, before he died, he left the tzavah. 2 letters. One tzavah he left to the Chevra Kadisha to bury him in his sacks. So the Chevra Kadisha said, no, we can't bury him in his sacks. Sorry, you can't. So they opened up the second letter. He said to his kids, you see, I own the world. I can't even take a pair of socks with me. I said, what did this Yid take with him? Right? Now remember, for every connection he used, political connection he used, to help Chinuch Atzmai, to help Torah Messiah, to help the Svadish Yeshiva start, just in the old Soviet Union, the new Soviet Union, the new whatever it's called, the post-Soviet Union, the yeshivas that he put up, Shuvu, millions and millions and millions, every connection he could have used for his own business. He didn't. And he pulled the levers because he realized the sacks you don't take with you, and how much tzedakah did he give? I have no clue. But I've heard people say, this is mikveh talk. It's something that we give. Whatever it is, it begins with the same letters as barsht or bilkalach, right? That some say that it could have been $1 billion that a man gave away. Most of it unknown that it came from him. And I ask you, so when we say, this is business, is the Rebbeinu Shalom part of my life? Stop for a second and think. Think a little bit how he's thinking. Think a little bit how he lived his life. And you'll be surprised how much coffee you can get, even Rahman al-Islam, when the gate is closed in front of us.